welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the Hasbara, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Be kind to the guys in this mess in the first place.
Put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste, a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. How's everybody doing tonight? So, Contrapoints decided to break her silence on Gaza. And in so doing has proved that actually there was something worse she could do with her platform than be silent on the subject. Wow. Thought we'd look at that a bit because it is a remarkable statement, like, to be giving. Let me just make sure. Yeah, that's reasonable size, I think. Try it. There. Okay, that's a bit bigger. Hopefully, let me know if you have trouble reading that chat. How are you doing? So, let me get my chat widget where I can actually see what's going on while I have something else full screening. And here we go. So here's what Contrapoints had to say. I'm posting this to Reddit instead of Twitter, hopefully to minimize fragments being clipped out of context. Sincerest apologies to the mods. So, many leftists feel betrayed because I haven't made a video on Palestine. Do they actually want a Contrapoints video about Palestine? Will they be happy if I get in the bath and pour milk on a mannequin of Benjamin Netanyahu? No. You know, I mean, speaking only for myself, I don't know that that's necessarily what anyone was Chat, did you hear anyone asking specifically for her to get in the bath and pour milk on a mannequin of Netanyahu? Because I don't know that that was necessarily what people were saying. Hello, Adria. I think it had something to do with the fact that she has a huge fucking platform. I mean, this Reddit alone has 101,000 members, apparently. And, like, that could be used in order to raise awareness about the ongoing genocide. Like, I don't think it's that leftists feel betrayed because she hasn't made a video on Palestine. I think it's, like, there's a fucking genocide going on, and if you have a big-ass platform that could be used to help encourage people to do something about it, to stand in opposition to it, to make sure they actually know what's going on, that's useful. That's a good thing to do. Like, I don't have much of a platform. I got, like, just recently I managed to make it up to 400 subscribers. You know, on here, at, you know, my chat, there, you know, on, like, the highest traffic days, I get maybe, like, 12 viewers in here at once. But I make a point of talking about it quite a lot because I feel like we, at the very least, need to be making sure that this remains front of mind because there's so much effort to make people forget about it, to just sort of normalize the fact that fucking millions of people are getting murdered. So, yeah, no, I don't think, Contrapoints, Natalie, I think I can call you Natalie, I don't think it was about pouring milk on a mannequin of Benjamin Netanyahu. I have posted about Gaza occasionally, and have quietly given money to Palestinian aid organizations. Why quietly? Like, you, again, the platform, you see, that kind of matters. When somebody with a platform like this is giving money to Palestinian aid organizations, the thing to do is do it fucking loudly, you see. To do it fucking loudly, because that encourages other people to do it. What I think what leftists really want is for me to join their chorus of anger. They sense some hesitation on my part and are judging me very harshly on my presumed opinions. I'd rather be judged on my actual opinions. Actually, I think her presumed opinions... having seen her actual opinions, I think that she was probably better off being judged on the presumed ones. Thinking about it. Like, I mean, Miss Rachel, whose entire presence online, whose entire platform is just educational entertainment for little kids, totally non-political channel, said she felt that she had to say something about Gaza and about what's being done to the kids there in particular, because kids are her thing. And I don't, that actually sounds kind of wrong, but yeah, I think you know what I mean. And that she actually felt people should feel ashamed about being silent if they got a platform like hers. And it's like, she's somebody, like, nobody would have expected her to say anything, because it isn't a political channel. It certainly isn't like a channel that has occasionally pretended to be some kind of, like, leftist or left-leaning channel or something like that. She's just a person who likes kids and cares about kids and wants to help kids, not be bored and learn how to talk well, apparently. I don't know much about Miss Rachel, but I gather from things that I've read that she's really good at helping kids sort of develop speech, because she's a trained speech pathologist or something, I don't know. But, I mean, I just can't help but contrast these things. Like, here's the thing I didn't know. I learned this from watching a video on this from the Tabernacle. That Noah Samson didn't know shit about Palestine, wasn't really paying attention to Palestine until very recently. Like, I mean, I remember watching a couple of his videos because Xander Hole hated him. Xander Hole hated him, and so that made me think that he probably was worth checking out, and he did some things on how toxic debate streamers are. And they are indeed. And that was cool. I mean, but it wasn't, massively compelling. Apparently a bunch of people disagreed because he had a huge following. Well, for doing videos of about how toxic debate streamer culture is. Which, cool. But he said, in the middle of this, like, I have this kind of platform, what the fuck am I doing if I'm not doing something about this? That the idea that those of us who have any kind of audience, the very least we should be doing is using that kind of access to people to make sure that their attention is directed towards this, that we can talk about what to do about it and stuff. Like, when I started out, when this whole fucking horrible 20 months of just genocide started out, my idea was actually, because I was really focusing very heavily on it outside of the stream, that this would be a place, because I kind of figured everyone watching probably was also traumatizing themselves, paying attention to it already, and it was going to be a place where we kind of looked at something to kind of keep to take our minds off it briefly, to sort of minimize the trauma a bit. And I realized, and I still do that to some extent,
the at the same time, it's like, this stuff is here, and I want to make sure that the tiny little platform I have is being used at least somewhat for the purpose of generating opposition. Like, there's a guy, a journalist, in the Entity, a guy by the name of Yisrael Frey. He's a Haredi who, Times of Israel described him as an ultra-leftist. And I had my doubts about that, because what the fuck does the Times of Israel know about ultra-leftists? Every time you hear about Israeli leftists, it turns out that they're like sort of Richard Spencer on a good day. But so I decided to look into this guy and asked a few people who I trust what they think, you know, whether that was like Israeli leftist, like slightly less racist than everybody else, or like somebody who would actually be considered a leftist outside of that 4chan country. And what I was told is, no, he's the real thing. And I was looking at him, and he like uses his platform to just absolutely, he's a journalist. Like, the first thing I saw, like right before he got arrested, was he was doing, I think, the only Hebrew language reporting that was pointing out who exactly made up the stories about the beheaded and burnt babies. That the same guys who have been in charge of a lot of the worst atrocities in Gaza over the past 20 months were the guys who made that up, and they made that up in order to cover up the fact that they murdered everyone who died in Kibbutz Be'eri. That literally they fired tank shells into the house where everybody was hunkered down, and everybody who was died there, it was their fucking fault. They chose to. They fired tank shells at a little house that was full of people. And now bits of that have made it onto like Israeli state TV, but not the whole thing. Like the bit about who was behind the story and their involvement in how all these dead people got that way had not been talked about. And he talked about it, and he got arrested. And you look at his Twitter feed. I mean, people say, you know, when you look at the English translation of Hebrew language Twitter, it's like you found a missing page of Mein Kampf. But this guy, I have to say, like, there was recently what they call a difficult security incident. I think it was like 5 IDF ghouls got taken out by the resistance in an amazing fucking operation. John Elmer did a thing about it on the EI live stream. It was incredible. They always are. And the guy, and his post about this in Hebrew, he lives there. He has to deal with these fucking people. Remember, was the world is a better place because of this. Mothers should not let their sons go off to fight and come back in boxes as war criminals. And he got fucking arrested for this. He's had, like, when this started, he did a video of himself. He'd lost his job already because he, like, actually condemned atrocities against the Palestinians, whereas the outlet he was working for just wanted bad things about Netanyahu, but, opposing racism against Palestinians was not okay. And so he got fired from there, so now he just makes his own little videos. And he did a video of himself saying the Kaddish. He's an ultra-Orthodox Haredi Jew he was also a legit leftist. I didn't know those two things went together like that, but apparently they do. Occasionally, very rarely. And he said the Kaddish, the Jewish prayer for the dead, over the people murdered in Gaza, and he got fucking death threats about that, and he keeps getting death threats. And the fucking government has been trying to find an excuse to lock him up for like 2 years now, almost. And he's still doing it. Like, that's somebody taking way more risk to say, in a much more hostile environment than Natalie Wynn or me or Noah Samson or the Tabernacle or fucking any of us. And I think, and I would still say that's, like, I mean, to me that's, like, kind of on the bare minimum that, like, I think of it this way. The way I think about this kind of shit is, like, what would I have, when it was us, what would I consider sufficient
oppositional activity in a German person, like an ordinary German, in order for them to be able to look me in the eye after it. And it's like that kind of thing, taking that level of a risk is kind of what I would say is appropriate. It's not quite enough, but it's like on the beginning level of acceptable. Now, Palestinians can judge that however they want. This is them. But I'm saying that is where I would be if we were talking about Germans opposing the Nazis. So, just to be clear, Palestinians can judge that however they want. I would not feel at all that it was my place to disagree with them. But that seems like sort of the level, and he's using that platform when he's getting death threats and people are trying to arrest him for it, and so that to me is like the standard here. So Natalie Wynn acting all put out because people want her to break her silence on the subject is a bit much. Noah Samson's slop bait is great. I mean, the way he's used that has been as a way to get views and talk about the genocide has been really brilliantly done. But let us continue. Is Israel committing genocide in Gaza? Yes. Do I oppose it? Yes. Do I feel angry about it? Yes. Like, then why the fuck are you getting, shitty about leftists wanting you to join their chorus of anger? Like, if you agree that it's genocide, then we all need to be fucking using whatever we've got to try to make it stop, because this country is making that genocide happen. Like what the fuck are our platforms for, if not? I also feel a lot of other things. Roman numeral 1. Doom. The week after October 7th, it was clear the mood among Israeli leaders and civilians was overwhelmingly kill or be killed, existential panic, and unstoppable lust for revenge. It reminded me of the US after 9/11. There was no reasoning or protesting them out of it. Nor was it politically feasible for the US to withdraw aid to Israel on a time frame that would make a difference. See, here's the thing, Natalie, gotta help you out here. The idea is that you put the kind of pressure on the US that makes it not only politically feasible for them to stop making genocide happen, but makes it politically dangerous for them to continue to make genocide happen. That's the point. That's one of the things that these platforms, like the one you got, are good for. This fatalism is just very convenient. Because if you're saying, oh, well, that wouldn't made a difference anyway, well, maybe it wouldn't have, but the idea is that you fucking try. This is a great excuse that she's offering for not having done anything. It would have required replacing most of Congress and overturning decades of bipartisan strategy and diplomacy. No, it wouldn't have required replacing them. It would have required creating a sufficient lack of governability, a sufficient shitstorm that the ones already there decide that the only thing for it is to stop doing this. It would have required, and it still does require, we can still make this thing stop. There's still, the next fucking murders to stop. It's like COVID. It's not too late for that either. There's always the next infections, and with this, it's still that you got the next massacres to stop. We can still do that. And regardless of convincing fucking members of Congress, there's also the supply chain. The supply line runs right through this country. There are all sorts of ways to disrupt it. We know where it starts because that's public information. It wouldn't be too hard to figure out exactly how it goes from there. Because it goes, all of that happens in public. You just pay attention. There are people like the Palestine Youth Movement and the Unmasked Mercs campaign already doing this. In other countries, you got dock workers already, like black banning Israeli cargo, refusing to offload or onload it. Like, that stuff is already happening in other places. So no, it does not require replacing most of Congress and overturning whatever. Even in the best case scenario, it would have taken years. So there was a sense of futility. Yeah, see, this is a sense of futility that, I mean, I think can be called liberalism. Because notice the only way she sees this working is to convince people in power to do the right thing. And she knows perfectly well that convincing people in power to do the right thing was a non-starter. They were not going to listen to arguments because they're genocidal ghouls. So she just doesn't fucking do anything. I mean, that's very convenient. But worse. Roman numeral 2. Misery. The leftist pro-Palestine movement quickly decided that their primary goal was not merely opposition to the genocide, but opposition to Zionism in general. Where the fuck has she been? Like, that she thinks this is a new development? First of all, she says that like that's a bad thing. But also, like, how completely unconnected to any of these movements is she, that she thinks it's a new thing, that people suddenly said, you know, Zionism actually kind of sucks. That's been where, like, leftist particular, like, pro-Palestinian movements, you know, Palestinian solidarity movement activists have been for years now, and apparently she has completely missed it. She's been just totally oblivious. That is opposition to the existence of Israel as a Jewish state. Like, again, you say that as if that's a bad thing, Natalie. Like, maybe ethno-states shouldn't. You ever thought about that? What if ethno-states shouldn't? Maybe we shouldn't have those. Maybe it sucks. Maybe we should have learned the lesson of not having ethno-states a long time ago. And here, they decided to draw the line separating decent people from genocidal fascists, which had the following consequences. It shrunk the coalition. Zionist is a very broad category. Most Jews are Zionists. Anyone who supports a two-state solution is a Zionist. I mean, first of all, like, let's just, okay, then I find that interesting, and this is like when people do, there are two groups of people who love to do this. People who are trying to do anti-Semitism, and people who are trying to defend Zionism, but know it sucks shit. And they focus on the percentage of Jews who are Zionists, in societies where Zionism is the default position to begin with. They do not look at the number of Zionists overall, and they do not say how many Zionists are Jews. Because if you did that, it would be like less than 10%. It would be like, because there are 14 million of us, by no means all of us Zionists. In some places, as many as like a third specifically refuse to identify as Zionist in polls. And in the US alone, there are 150 million self-identifying Zionists, at least. Like, so, let's not just pretend that this is about Jews. Zionism is the dominant ideology in relation to, like, how the Middle East is viewed in the US and Western Europe. And it wasn't always. It became that way at a very specific time when Israel proved themselves useful to imperialist goals. But so, yeah, anyone who supports the two-state solution is a Zionist. So, like, yeah, if you support, it doesn't matter what size ethno-state you support. If you support an ethno-state, you're a Zionist. So, like, that's bad. It was politically infeasible. What is the pathway that takes us from the present situation to the dissolution of Israel? God, sorry about that. to the what? Let me start over. What is the pathway that takes us from the present situation to the dissolution of Israel as a Jewish state? First, okay, shut the fuck up about calling it a Jewish. It is a Zionist state. The only claim it has to be a Jewish state is that Jews have more rights there than anyone else. But I mean, I have to remind people, she wrote this past week. And if you're paying any fucking attention at all to what's going on in the entity, the dissolution of the settler society is already proceeding apace. It's falling apart in there. I don't see how this could happen without either a total internal collapse of Israeli society. You mean like the one that we're seeing right now, anyone who's paying attention. Like, or else, nuclear war. As usual, leftists have championed a doomed cause. Wait, okay, so the idea is we should not be anti-racists if anti-racism is unlikely to succeed. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, I mean, that is just such a bullshit, demobilizing idea. I'm not saying she probably genuinely believes all of this, and that sucks, actually. Because the thing is, like, literally every time that society has improved at all, it was because there were people who insisted on fighting for something that was unlikely. Something that was unlikely to win. And sometimes they got part of the way and sometimes they got all the way on that. But that's what it fucking was. That was what it was when it was like the abolition of slavery. That's what it was when it was like universal adult suffrage. That's what it was when it was like the 8-hour day and the right to organize. Like, it's always been down to people who who were fighting for something that was unlikely and refused to give up. I'm gonna be back in just a second. I need to get like a glass of water. Hang on. Be literally just a couple of seconds. Okay. I'm back. My throat is dry, my allergies are acting up, that's what's going on there. 3. It introduced dangerous ambiguities. The vagueness of Zionism as a political Satan enables all kinds of rhetorical abuses. For example, like the rhetorical abuse she's engaging in here, for example. On the one hand, right-wing Israelis held up all anti-Zionist protests as existentially threatening and inherently anti-Semitic. Well, so they do the anti-Semitic thing of equating the Zionist movement with all Jews, even though there are increasing numbers of Jews who are sick of the fucking Zionist movement and are quite open about that. So therefore we shouldn't do it. It pisses off fascists, so we shouldn't do it. On the other hand, there is a long history of anti-Semites using the term Zionist in deliberately equivocal ways. Zog, etc. That isn't a deliberately equivocal way, that is an unequivocal way. Like, in fact, it's really interesting. I got into it. There was a time when I didn't block quite as readily as I do now. And so I ended up, like, fighting with some of these people, and when you fight with them, sometimes you will actually get some insight. And one of the insights I got was, they don't, like, when they talk about Zionists, they're not using it to do with anything to do with the Zionist movement, Herzl, Weizmann, any of those people. They're using it in the sense of the protocols of the elders of Zion. That is literally what they mean by Zionist. Anti-Semites are happy for the opportunity to misappropriate the now popular anti-Zionist label to legitimize their agenda. Yeah, you gotta stop them. You gotta oppose them. And many people are not informed enough about anti-Semitism to recognize when this is happening. Contrapoints, for example, clearly isn't. These problems are mutually reinforcing. Like, I mean, has anyone noticed a pattern here? Like, in all of this, she's just started out by saying, yeah, there's a genocide. And everything has been a combination of why she's uncomfortable with doing anything about it. It's all been something about how uncomfortable this makes her to even think about trying to do something about it. Like, seriously, shut the fuck up. I was not, and let me say, for anyone who has the idea that this is contradictory, because people were saying, I was not one of the people who wanted to hear Contrapoints take on anything, actually. I was kind of done with her. I never really started with her. There were a couple of videos years ago that I remember that were kind of good that I saw, but never enough that I subscribed to her channel. And then she said shitty things about, like, non-binary people a few times, and hangs out with Hillary Clinton. Roman numeral 3. Dread. The online left has spent the last 20 months distributing hundreds of photos and videos of dead Palestinian children. The main effect of this has been to create a population of people, that's usually what populations are, in a constant state of blood-boiling rage with no consequential political outlet. Well, I mean, apart from activism against the genocide, that's the political outlet. Like, and if you haven't noticed, Natalie, there's been a lot of stuff related to that. I fear this may be worse than useless. Anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are conceptually not the same, and conflating them is dangerous. Well, that's big of you to acknowledge. Thank you, Natalie. But in practice, she likes big butts and she cannot lie. The way Israel is perceived does seep out into attitudes toward Jews in general. Yes, exactly. Like, fucking Israel is a major motor of anti-Semitism. They're a major exporter of it. It's like the one thing that they're still exporting regularly. Because they don't need ports for it. They just need to do this shit, and then they go out and say, yes, we're doing this for the Jewish people, and all this bullshit. And it's like, yeah, no. And that means that, like, those of us who look at this and are Jewish and have to, you know, go out there and say, yeah, fuck that. We didn't ask for that shit. That's you. Shut the fuck up and stop doing that, please. I don't think Jews who feel isolated and wary in the current atmosphere are simply hysterical or hallucinating. What about how Palestinians feel, though? Like, have you noticed? Like, we're like several paragraphs deep into this thing, and the idea that Palestinians have feelings hasn't come up yet. The idea that the online left includes Palestinians, that the online left also includes Jews, actually, that maybe the online left is also, to a great extent, also the offline left, and that it is a multi-ethnic thing. Yes, there's communal trauma and hypervigilance. Yes, there's disingenuous right-wing ghouls dismissing and censoring all criticism of Israel on the pretext of fighting anti-Semitism. But there's also a violent fear of historical anti-Semitic patterns recurring, and that fear gives power to the right-wing Zionist claim that only Israel can keep Jews safe. Like, who the fuck can look at what's been going on there? I mean, first of all, it's like, this sentence starts out in a place where like, part of that is valid. Yes, there is a valid fear of historical anti-Semitic patterns recurring. And the thing is, because Israel is creating that risk by saying that all the shit they're doing is in our name and in our interest, the best way to actually minimize that risk is to say fuck Israel. To say no, they're not, that's them. That's nothing to do with us. We don't like that. We don't want it, and stand against it because it's also, you know, the right thing to do. But the idea that anyone is looking at Israel right now and seriously thinking that only Israel can keep Jews safe, first of all, like, Jews in Israel don't agree. They're trying to leave. They've been trying to leave for a while. And it's hard not to notice that Israel's starting wars, like starting one after another and committing genocide and doing all this shit, it has not actually increased the safety of Jews living there. I mean, like, it increased the likelihood of high explosive devices landing on Jews in Israel from the sky, actually. So I don't know that I don't think that Israel is being, like, reinforced as a safe place for Jews by any of this, actually. Does this mean Israel should not be criticized and sanctioned? Absolutely not. But it's something I don't want to risk contributing to, if not outweighed by tangible benefits. So I approach the issue cautiously. Roman numeral 4. Bitterness. Much of the online left spent all of 2024 single-mindedly focused on Palestine and the complicity of democratic politicians in sending aid to Israel. No. They weren't complicit in sending aid to Israel. Because they were sending aid to Israel, they were complicit in genocide. That's a weird way of putting that. It's like she doesn't want to acknowledge that they were committing genocide. And also, like, maybe when there is a fucking genocide going on, when, like, the worst fucking atrocity a lot of us have ever seen in our lifetimes, unfolding in front of us, in full fucking 4K color, that it's kind of natural and is appropriate to be focusing primarily on that because, like, huge numbers of people could be murdered. This campaign had the following effects. 1. 0 Palestinian lives were saved. Not one fewer bomb or bullet was fired by the IDF. Okay, again, this is interesting because if you actually listen to Palestinians in Gaza, whenever any chance they get, they're saying, please continue protesting. Please continue speaking up. It helps us keep going. It helps us think that there is somebody there out there who gives a shit whether we live or die. So, like even if we accept anything about number 1, and I don't, because that pressure has created situations where at least some Palestinians were able to get out to safety who had a target on them, like Abu Bakr Abed, who's in Dublin now. Like, and the people around him, because Israel had a total target on him, and now he's in Dublin, so they aren't going to kill a whole bunch of people because they're trying to kill him. Because he's a journalist, and they killed journalists. 2. It may have slightly contributed to the re-election of Trump, guaranteeing that the US will put no diplomatic pressure on Netanyahu for at least 4 years, and making protests against Israel both most riskier and less effective. Okay, now, if we're going to acknowledge... The only way this makes sense is if you're acknowledging that the Democrats' choice to support genocide hurt their chances in the election. That they chose to commit the crime of crimes, and that resulted in an outcome they said absolutely had to be stopped. And here's the thing. We've already seen diplomatic pressure on Israel. We've seen considerably more of it. Actually, I mean, there was no diplomatic pressure on Israel in 23 and 24. Like, the whole way this Iran thing went down, the whole way that happened, that was very clearly pressure. The whole thing seems to me to have been done in a way that could, on the one hand, kind of appear to be giving the hardliners what they wanted, while at the same time giving a pretext on which to say, okay, cut it out, Israel, telling Netanyahu to cut it out because Israel's getting fucking wrecked. Trump is also incidentally a menace to me and basically everyone I care about. A perfectly enlightened being would feel no bitterness about this, but I do. Like, he's also a fucking menace to me and basically everyone I care about. Like, I mean, seriously. There are a couple of things that come to mind. One, that is in itself a good reason to have been putting as much pressure as possible on the Democrats to stop committing genocide so that they wouldn't be throwing a fucking election. And here's the other thing. I mean, I'm just reminded of this woman, this Yemeni woman, who was interviewed after Israeli attacks, some of the earliest ones, on Sana'a or Hodeidah, I forget which place. Yeah, it was a response to Yemen's sanctions on Israel. And what she said was, the blows that we're absorbing were meant for the Palestinians, and they almost certainly would have hit them much harder. It is an honor to take them. Like, if the fight against genocide means that we're going to have to actually deal with a bigger fight here at home in order to actually put a stop to this entire fucking regime, and I don't mean this in the way that, like, fucking liberals will act like there's a regime, whenever there's, like, Republicans in office. I'm saying it as a system of government, a social economic system. Like, we need to be fighting this, and we were going to be fighting it one way or another. And, like, as somebody who is actually taking a couple of these blows and is fucking terrified by some of it, it's like, on the other hand, like, this is payback on a certain level for us fighting for the Palestinians. Inadequately, though we have done it. We absolutely need to bring our game up. None of this is the fault of Palestinians, of course, who are overwhelmingly the victims here. Overwhelming? What do you mean, overwhelmingly? Like, who? What are the exceptions there? You'd only need overwhelmingly if you're making an exception. I hope that someday American policy will shift in their favor, and I will continue to support that cause. Continue? Like, what the fuck? Continue implies you've been supporting that cause in the first place. TLDR, I see the situation as bleak, intractable, extremely divisive, and devoid of any element that could be appropriately transformed into political entertainment. That's why I haven't made a video about it. Hopefully it goes without saying that these are just my thoughts. Yeah, I hope so too, because, like, I wouldn't want anyone thinking that these are fucking my thoughts. These are hers. That, like, literally, if you watch this and you think because I'm reading this aloud, like, this is your first time here or something like that, and you think I'm reading this aloud and that means I'm like, these are also my thoughts because, I don't know, because bread tubers are sensates. I'm rewatching Sense8, so I'm making a reference to a Netflix show from like 8 years ago. 10 years ago. I'm sure other quote-unquote bread tubers have different opinions. Locked post. New comments cannot be posted. Yeah, I mean, that sucked. That really, really sucked. She really was much better off. We were all much better off when she was being silent. Like, I mean, what gets me is just the way that she is, whether it's self-serving or not, whether, I mean, it's intentionally self-serving or not, it is very convenient to just sort of say absolutely nothing could possibly have helped. Yeah, I'm rewatching Sense8. I have been for like the past week. Somebody mentioned something about it and I wanted to see it again, and it rocks. It is a really good show. It holds up to rewatching. There's one bit, that whole fucking Nomi hospital sequence at the beginning, that like triggers the fuck out of me. It's really good, but Jesus Christ. Hey Badger. But on the whole, it's an excellent show. Ah, hell. Okay, let me get that fixed. There we go. So, I'm thinking we might just kind of continue with this. I've got a video from the Cavernacle, who I watched another one of his, not on stream, just the other night. It showed up in my Rex and I wanted to see it. I was right about BreadTube, Contrapoints in Israel. Or there's also Hassan's coverage on the Contrapoint statement. Any particular preference between those two? I can go either way. Jesus, that is such a shitty take. So, I think I'll go with the Cavernacle. I was liking what he was saying in the last one. I think it would be interesting to see how he continues it. Drop the link to this in chat. Yeah, I mean, I had so much more respect for her before this, and I wasn't actually all that impressed with her then. God, that sucked.
What was a nice surprise is the response was actually far more positive than I'd imagined, because I've made videos on this channel calling out, or not really calling out, but like discussing other creators on the left, like Hassan, for example, and a lot of the time when you're even just trying to be more objective and not get personal, people get really angry when you criticize people they like. But I think with this one, I just said something a lot of people have been feeling.
Yeah,
and I've had like a lot
I mean, what he said, maybe he's gonna like clip a couple of clips of it, but I mean, he's like, what the fuck are these? If this is a political platform that we're doing as leftists on, as leftist YouTube creators, then what the fuck is that platform for if we're not using it to fight against something like this?
Messages, people saying that they felt this for a long time, and that's been cool to see that a lot of people, not just myself, had recognised this sort of failure with left-wing politics on YouTube, and in a way the success of the evolution of left-wing politics on YouTube, where the previous generation weren't great on this, talking about Israel and Palestine, but there's like a new generation that has formed out of that are really good and have a massive reach now as well. I thought my argument was pretty good. I even got a girlfriend, seal of approval.
Yeah, I mean, and then there are those of us who don't have much reach at all, but I mean, I think I'm pretty good on it. People seem to agree with that. Palestinians that I know seem to think I have a reasonable view of the subject, and so I'll go with that. I'm sure it's not perfect, but and I have
as well.
Well, I have 400 subscribers. That's not nothing. It took me long enough to get there.
And in the video, I spent the first half talking in broad strokes, and the second half focusing on three creators: PhilosophyTube, HBomb Guy, and Contrapoints. Not because they were like the worst offenders, just because they're three of the biggest creators, and I just wanted to illustrate my point and how we've moved past the kind of space they've created. But of course, this video did get a lot of traction, and a lot of people saw it, and I did get a lot of...
Okay, I'm going to skip over this.
Although the sentiment underneath the video was overwhelmingly positive, which is what I suspected, and that is a lot of lib leftists centering identity when talking about things like Zionism, and they must be in like these bubbles where they actually know people who might be Israeli, or they might have some sort of sympathy for the state of Israel, because the way they...
Yeah, I mean, and the wild thing is, it's like... Yeah, I mean, I know a few Israelis, people who are citizens of Israel, and they're the first people, the ones that I actually have maintained contact with, specifically are like full-on opponents of the regime, and a lot of them have ended up fleeing occupied Palestine because of it, because it's so dangerous. And they're the first people to tell you that they're basically all alone in this fucking 4chan hellhole.
Speak about it is just really bizarre, and it seems to bring out like the worst of lib identity politics, where you're really trying to empathise with everyone and understand their lived-in experience, which is obviously good in a lot of circumstances, but when you're applying it to people who have grown up in an apartheid state and might be offended at Western leftists and just general people being against that state existing,
Yeah.
vocalising that is just never helpful to this discussion, because why...
Yeah, notice she didn't use the word apartheid once.
Are we even talking about that right now? And that kind of plays into some of the criticism I got, where people said I was like downplaying anti-Semitism and shit like that, when, you know, I really wasn't. I was just talking about left-wing anti-Semitism specifically and focusing
Yeah,
on...
and let me say, I think he actually gives that concept more credit than it deserves. Because, I mean, I've seen anti-Semitism in leftist spaces a number of times. I've called it out quite a bit. But there's no left-wing anti-Semitism. It is just the same, like, reactionary anti-Semitic bullshit that Nazis do, but it's in leftist spaces. And a lot of the time, when you find it in leftist spaces, it's because you got fash who think that they've found an opening to do a bit of entryism. Like, it isn't... that when you hear people try to claim that there's some specific left-wing kind of anti-Semitism, you're pretty much always talking to a Zionist propagandist.
Like, at this time, seems to be the weirdest focus ever, because firstly, that's what the establishment are labelling everyone who is anti-Israel at this point.
Yeah.
But also, it's just not something that has institutional power.
Or even just acknowledges that there's a fucking genocide.
Issue on the left. Like, it's not 1952 in, like, the communist bloc or something like that. There is just not a significant strain of anti-Semitism in the Western left, specifically online. But yeah, I want to talk about this today. I want to address the comments. I want to clarify a few arguments. People saying I've been uncharitable because Philosophy Jew has said something and there has been a fundraiser.
Okay, I'm going to switch over and I'm going to actually watch the first video. Because it sounds like this will be better. The first one will be better. This is like a more narrow response. Okay, so we're gonna skip over.
Oh, maybe it had a point.
That was a hell of a thing to start out on. Okay, here we go.
But I made a decision a couple of weeks ago, like, not to make it, and I just thought it wouldn't be helpful. And sometimes you just, you know, have other things in your mind you want to talk about, and other things were in my head, like how the UK is going full fascist because of its war on free speech to protect Israel, things like that. But
yeah,
I've come back
not to mention its war on trans people, which now you've got, cops are now actually investigating parents who get internationally recognized best practices healthcare for their trans kids. Like, there are police investigations going on. Thank you, fucking West Streeting.
Because I saw that Contrapoints was beefing with Taylor Lorenz on Twitter, and it was about left-wing anti-Semitism. And this is something that seems to be only discussed right now by people who don't really talk much about Gaza, and also exist in leftist video essay circles. Now, I've actually called out people before, not by name, but there seems to be some sort of correlation between leftists who are on Nebula and leftists who have chosen to talk about leftist anti-Semitism while Israel are doing the worst crime against humanity of
Okay, I haven't noticed this correlation, but I'm interested.
this century and one of the worst crimes in the post-war era. I just find it really interesting that that is the case. But this video isn't me trying to pressure anyone to talk about Gaza, because to me right now, if you haven't spoken about it, I don't give a shit if you speak about it.
See, I disagree. Like, if somebody hasn't spoken about it, okay, let me say, if somebody has a platform and hasn't spoken about it, I feel a little bit differently, especially if it is a political platform. Although, if you've got an apolitical platform and you've been thinking about speaking about it and you're afraid of saying it, then do fucking come right out. Especially, I would say, like, apolitical platforms, people who are, like, who are known for not really known for political takes or whatever, like, you know, Ms. Rachel, for example, we were just talking about a few minutes ago. Like, them coming out is huge, and I think, you know, if they've been silent and decide to stop being silent, I think that rocks. But, you know, if you have, like, supposedly a leftist political presence on the internet, and you have avoided talking about this, which literally any leftist who is on the internet or off the internet is talking about constantly, then that's shonky as fuck.
Clearly made a choice not to talk about it, so I'm not pressuring anyone. I don't want anyone to go to other creators' comment section and say, why haven't you spoken about Gaza? Why haven't you done this?
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll. I don't know. Maybe they'll do a fucking Contrapoints and like fucking slam dunk their own careers. Because I don't see that take washing off of Contrapoints anytime soon.
It doesn't matter. By October, it would have been 2 years, and they've had absolutely loads of time to do it. This video isn't some sort of pressure.
2 years, and if we take estimates that have been variously bandied about by the White House and now by Beelzebub Ostrich, the fascist finance minister, indicate that Israel and the U.S. have murdered like 700,000 people in Gaza.
A campaign against very prominent creators to do a fundraiser for Gaza or something like that. It's more about growing out of certain content niches, the failures of BreadTube, how something that seemed quite radical, I guess, in its own way back in 2018, 2019, how it really has just served its purpose. And
I think part of it is also BreadTube as a concept has always been just a weird little blob. It has been a bit of a Kirby. Mostly because BreadTube is a Reddit thread, a subreddit, and people just throw all sorts of things in there, so you get people who think, like, Destiny is BreadTube, or was BreadTube at some point, and then you have, like, creators like, for example, ThoughtSlime, or, you know, more, like, radical creators who actually take, you know, and then you have, like, sort of leftish-leaning libs, like Contrapoints or whatever. And so it has always been a politically incoherent concept. And it's why it's really ridiculous when people like Caleb Muppet pretend that is this kind of like CIA Borg thing.
Has, in my opinion, become pretty irrelevant to online politics. Like, sure, they release videos that get a lot of views. They've also had like very mainstream success, and they're pretty irrelevant to the moment in time we find ourselves in, with like politics in the UK and the US, where these creators are primarily from. And I always think about this: if you told a lot of them what 2023, 4, and 5 would look like in terms of this terrible crime being done in Gaza, but also Western governments using that to whip up Islamophobia, to actually enact fascist policies.
Yeah, and not to mention, I mean, I think this is what happened. Thinking back on the campaign, that the fact that just about everybody who is also willing to go to the, you know, hit the mat for like trans rights and against racist police terror and all that stuff. Basically, everybody who would be putting pressure on the Democrats over any of that stuff was focused on the genocide in Gaza, because how can you not be? Yeah, it's a genocide, and the regime that depends on your governability is carrying it out. You gotta. And I think on a certain level, like, the DNC used that as an opportunity to sort of move away from even acknowledging a lot of other popular positions amongst their voting base. Like, because, like, Black Lives Matter didn't get a fucking look in at the convention. Trans people were off the stage. You had no indications, like, support for immigrants' rights. The line there was, like, Trump isn't hard enough on refugees. Nazis who want to have a nice murder fest on the border, they'll be disappointed by Trump. They should vote Democrat because we're going to do that. I think they used that as an opportunity to just sort of move way to the right on every single other thing, because everybody was focused so much on this mass slaughter. And I mean, on a certain level, I think that's exactly what they would do one way or another. And I don't think that that I should not be clear. I am not saying that means we shouldn't have done that. I think we absolutely were right to. I think there were things we should have done in order to be more effective that we still aren't really doing. But I mean, I think that was just a convenient little ancillary benefit that they got out of this.
You'd probably say they'd make videos calling it out and stuff, but it so happens that a lot of them don't do this. And I've actually asked on Instagram for a lot of people who are fans of these creators or are fans of these creators, what do they think about all of this? So we're going to read that for you at the end. But this isn't like a very structured essay, it's just me venting my own thoughts about all of this stuff today, and just about how sometimes political movements, online political movements, they can serve their purpose, and then you can realise their value has kind of gone. And I think that is the case with BreadTube video essayists, and I would also say left-wing video essayists. There are still a lot that I like. There are still a lot who I agree with their politics. I really respect the content they've made. Best example of this is Noah Sampson literally changing his entire channel right now.
Yeah, this is where I heard about that. I had no idea that was because, I mean, when he talks about this stuff, he sounds like somebody who has been paying attention for a long time. He gets his facts right. He does not, you don't hear a lot of the things that a lot of recent arrivals to caring about Palestine will say, where, they still either think that there's, maybe there's a good Zionism hidden someplace in the bottom of a well, or or various other things that are just sort of newbie beliefs, kind of, that exist in kind of any movement. I didn't hear anything like that. He just kind of, he hit the ground running. I assumed that he had been there the whole time and he just wasn't doing stuff about it until he started doing stuff about it. So, I mean, I actually have a lot of respect for that.
To something that nearly exclusively talks about Palestine, which is really commendable. I haven't seen anyone else do that, and he had a very successful channel based on not talking about stuff that really had anything to do with that. So that is the best example I've seen, and he did that massive fundraiser. I was happy to go on, and he raised loads of money, did something very tangible. And I also think it's interesting the people who didn't go on that.
Yeah, well, it's not just the empathy. I mean, the people I'm talking about who have these sort of newbie beliefs, they have the empathy. Emotionally, their hearts are in the right place, but their knowledge isn't, and so there are certain things they come in. Don't ask me for more examples, but it's sometimes you just encounter somebody who has just gotten into a movement, and they're very enthusiastic about it, but they haven't necessarily read a whole lot. And you notice that from sort of things that they say. But I was not picking up, it didn't sound like that. It sounded to me like he had made a huge effort to educate himself, if this was something he knew nothing about. Because because I like did not pick up on anything that was like a really glaring problem with what he's had to say.
And you're asking yourself, why wouldn't they go on that? And then you ask yourself, why haven't they really spoke about any of this stuff? And that's what I really want to get into today. Talk about, you know, the bread tube phenomenon and just why they kind of don't really matter anymore to actual politics, where they actually did have some sort of political influence back in the day. Before we go any further, if you like my content, after you watch the video, please like, maybe subscribe to my channel. If you want to support my work, check out my Patreon and check out my YouTube memberships. And if you want to follow me on social media, at The Tabernacle on Blue Sky and also on Instagram. Actually doing anything in the online political space, I think, you know, BreadTube specifically has run its course. And now let's talk about that and let's go into the topic, which is things...
This is the part that's that I think is important. This is about, like, the actual, you know, what he's talking about with, like, the responsibility of creators, which is something that I think is really important, because, like, some of us, like, Thought Slime will often joke about, like, how little his opinions should matter. But at the same time, and it's true, and, like, you hear that from a lot of it, like, although, you know, he's very careful about what he says, and his stuff is always very thoughtful. Just to be clear, but I feel like we should never underestimate. We shouldn't overestimate the influence things we say have. I don't think that that's a good idea either. But we shouldn't, like, there's some people who will pretend like they have no influence at all. Like, people with a fair-sized audience as well will be like, oh yeah, but why is anyone going to listen to me? But the thing is, it's like, people are listening to you. And I feel like what that means, we should be thinking about what we say and how we say it and everything, because in the sense, making sure that we would be comfortable with other people potentially acting on it, and putting the things out there into this space that we would like to see propagate, you know?
Do with Israel and Gaza and BreadTube's failure to really discuss these things for a variety of reasons. Now, the defense I see of these creators not talking about anything is wild to me, because I don't think anyone is asking them, like their audiences primarily, you have to release an 8-hour video or a 4-hour video discussing the history of Israeli colonialism or something like that. It's more what people see.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing, it's more what people want, I think. Oh God, Lex Friedman, God, that fucking guy. He's there in case you run out of fucking Xanax. What people want is the creators to do a thing in opposition to the genocide, to encourage their audiences to oppose the genocide in their own way, you know. Like, I mean, Thought Slime, who hasn't done a whole lot of videos at all, actually had he had one called "Zionists Are Crybabies," and the whole point, you know, it was very much a Thought Slime video, but it did bring up the issue in the room and why people should not give a fuck what Zionists have to say.
Is your weird silence about stuff just speak volumes about maybe your politics or why you even started your channels in the first place.
Yeah.
And why you are now becoming irrelevant to people who really care about these things, because it's clear what maybe your ambitions of the channel were, and it wasn't really related to anything tangible in terms of politics. But
yeah,
I also don't accept the defense.
It's interesting because you can see there is a difference in content between the people who do have, like, sort of tangible political ambitions for the channel, in addition to just wanting to do creative work and for an appreciative audience, and the ones who are not particularly have any particular interest in particular political outcomes. Like, for example, I mean, Contrapoints is a good example of this, because she does not really do anything that, I mean, she does some stuff that is, like, that challenges fascists a little bit, but it is not anything where you could it isn't movement building stuff. It doesn't try to be movement building stuff. It's mostly sort of building her audience.
Because I see so many people in public life who have risked stuff by talking about this. So you really just have to ask yourself, you're defending the political video essay channels from actually commenting about Gaza, you have to ask yourself why you're doing that. So Denise Goff, who is the star of Andor Season 1 and Season 2, I followed her since Season 1 because she's the voice of Yennefer in one of my favourite games, The Witcher 3.
She played the shit out of this role, too.
Good on Palestine, right? But as she was getting all this attention for Andor...
Yeah, I watched an interview with her. She's from Clare, which, if you ever get a chance to visit Ireland, that is a county well worth checking out. Absolutely gorgeous country place, very little mobile signal. But she was talking about she was not really up on Palestine very much. But then all this stuff was going on, the genocide and everything was going on, she decided, obviously, she has to say something about this. Who's Matt Bernstein? I'm not familiar with him.
Or Season 2.
Hey, Raven G.
She didn't stop posting about it. She started continually posting about it, like nearly every single time she even posted on social media. So this is an actress who's used her platform to speak up for humanity and used her platform to raise awareness. And
yeah,
you feel like if you are a celebrity with that kind of platform, that is a good thing to do. But she's not like super famous or anything. It's not like there's going to be no repercussions for doing this. But
yeah, I mean, on the other hand, it's like, what a thematically appropriate role to have had such a big moment in, and then come out as like a celebrity actor who is, standing up against this genocide that basically the entire Western world is committing. Because she plays and she does such a beautiful job in the role. If you haven't seen Andor, absolutely watch it. It is so good on so many levels. But she plays this genocidal ghoul person whose whole thing, she's very much she's a genocidal girl boss. She's like Hillary Clinton kind of. She's just pissed off at this boys club that she's in, and all the bureaucracy, and it's getting in the way of doing imperialist terror well. And that's the role, and it is the perfect role to have been really big in, and then kind of, so people are, and then thematically be talking about this.
She's choosing to do this instead. You could make the point, she's Irish. Are Irish people immune from facing backlash? I know people accept...
Oh, well, there's a lot less backlash in Ireland, because it would be much harder to have the backlash. Even your Zionists, for the most part, have to be a little bit careful about it, because if you look at the polls in Ireland... Yeah, it's the amount of support for Israel is practically it's barely in the double digits.
Yeah, a tiny bit more.
Homelander.
History with the struggles against
Homeland Runner.
It's colonialism. But at the same time, look what is happening to NECAP. And
yeah, although it's worth noting, what's happened in NECAP happened to them in Britain, and it happened to them in the US. It did not happen to them in Ireland, except... in the sense that they are from the part of Ireland that is occupied by Britain.
That's a good example. NECAP, Bob Dylan, they all spoke up on these massive platforms, and they're increasingly facing these crazy backlashes, and they still did it anyway, even though they're artists, not political commentators. So when you're seeing all these people, it's not...
Well, yeah, although they're also both fairly political artists, especially Bob Dylan. I mean... his work is very, and his lyrics are it's two of them. It's a duo. I forget it because the frontman is the guy that I always associate with Bob Dylan. But their lyrics are very political, actually. Less so, NECAP's also fairly political.
Just them, it's people across entertainment, journalism, everything, who are risking stuff to speak up about Palestine and British and American fascism. You think it's a great thing, and you're like, why doesn't everyone do this? But if you have made
thank you,
your
River.
career in left-wing politics, making videos on left-wing politics, your source of revenue is primarily crowdfunding, and people have given you this voice, to speak about these things and maybe change people's opinions, help change the culture and stuff. I just don't know how you can be okay with not saying something.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that's so wild about the Contrapoints statement. She's like, as somebody who is in a position to actually influence people's opinions, she's like, well, I couldn't really influence anybody's opinion anyway, so I guess I'm not going to do it. I mean, like, it just so completely, like, this self-fulfilling prospect of, prophecy of futility.
To give you my perspective as a creator, I know these people all release less videos than someone like me, Hassan, loads of different people, right? But even that adds a little element of, well, you don't upload much, so you could really do something here that would be really good. Either a massive live stream like Noah Sampson did, that like marathon, like 8-day stream, or you could make a video, or you could collab with someone, go on someone else's channel to talk about it, like use your platform to get your audience who might be more like lib leftists on board with this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, what's the point if you don't think that you can change anybody's mind? Then why do you have a political YouTube channel? Why don't you just like show fucking cat videos? Like, I mean, if you're doing political content on here, you must feel that you are at least partially trying to have an influence on the way things are thought about and talked about.
And I'm just trying to put myself in their shoes of like, I understand they see their videos differently to how I see my videos. My videos are just me talking about something. Their videos to them are probably like their art. It's their art. So why would they have to talk about something like this? But I feel like there's just a certain element to this. I just cannot understand.
Yeah, I mean, and that, which is also wild because like you can do art and have it be political. You can do aesthetically. You know, you can do have like political content and have it be aesthetic and have cool production values. Like, there are people who do that. I occasionally aspire to it, but I never have the time or energy to fucking do it. Which is why my production values suck shit for the most part.
Or relatively silent on, because, like I said, it's not just a geopolitical issue. Our government is totally complicit, and even with that as well, it's not just totally complicit in carrying out this terrible genocide in Palestine. These governments are actively weaponizing identity politics against its citizens to wage this crazy war on free speech, where now in the UK, it's now a terror offence to support an anti-Israeli, pro-Palestinian civil disobedience group.
Yeah. I mean, and you have to understand, to truly understand how fucking off the hook it is that Palestine action is prescribed in Britain. You have to understand that the Democratic Unionist Party, which is a front group for loyalist paramilitaries with ties to heavily armed neo-Nazi groups throughout Europe and North America, that have never given up their arms, that have been carrying out sectarian settler terror all along, never stopped. They're totally legal. But fucking Palestine Action, who have done some property damage to stop a genocide, they're a terrorist group.
And if you're not going to speak up now, just when would the right time be? That's what I mean, like, when would the right time be? What would the conditions be that you would finally say
afterwards?
Do we have to have internment camps for like Muslims and socialists? Like, do we have to get to that point? And that's what I'm saying. As a creator, I feel a certain debt to my own community because I wouldn't exist in the space without them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do this as a job without them. And most of my income isn't made through Patreon or anything like that. Obviously, super appreciate my patrons and everything. But
I mean, the sad thing about my life at the moment is that most of my income is, and that's because I basically haven't got any. So, I mean, anyone who wants to like support my support this channel and support my ability to eat, I very much appreciate it, because it is a very rough time. And I'm gonna drop you a link where you can do that. Nobody should feel pressured to do so. If they can't, they can't. Everybody's kind of fucked at the moment. But if you can and you do, I very much appreciate it. I've got some kind of optimistic stuff going on at the moment. And maybe things are looking up a little, but it's early days and I don't want to jinx that. But so anyway, yes.
My livelihood isn't primarily funded by them, but I still feel responsibility because I know people just don't have a voice for themselves. So if I can like lead a fundraiser, which I've done a few times on this channel, or I can just keep talking about certain issues and educate people, even though it does feel at times with my small channel I'm just like saying shit into the ether and no one even like hears it.
I mean, that's wild when I hear him have the small channel. He has 200,000 subscribers. Yeah, that is a small channel by YouTube standards. But fuck, I mean, it's taken me, I think, 4 years now to get up to 400 subscribers.
Still a responsibility to do it. And also, I understand how, for a lot of people, they'll never be satisfied as well. I understand that element, because I've got that as well. I've had people, and I had another YouTuber recently in my comments saying, why have you stopped talking about Gaza? Which was bizarre to me, because I've recently made 2 videos on it, but I understand how there can be these annoying people who can use things like that to constantly have a go at you, like, why aren't you talking about it? Why aren't you talking about it? Why isn't every single video about it? Why? And I understand there is an element who will be like, probably asking too much and be annoying, but I feel like the general sentiment is, and I see that with even people like Pedro Pascal getting credit for like the tiny bit of lip service he pays Palestine. I think people just want some acknowledgement and want you to do something.
Yeah, or like Guy Pearce, he wore that like that tie pin, the Palestine flag tie pin, and it's like, yeah, that's good. It's not a lot. And, I mean, yeah, there's probably a certain amount of career risk doing it, but it isn't, like, proportionate to what was done, the amount of praise is often way out of whack.
That they have given you, because you do have this elevated platform to speak on these issues, and people will listen to you, and people won't listen to most other people. And I feel there's a responsibility, if you care about left-wing politics, if you care about humanity, if you're anti-fascist, if you're against Islamophobia, if you're against anti-Semitism for that matter, you should be speaking up against what your government is doing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree entirely. And I'm just noticing the time. It is time for me to wrap up for tonight. Thanks to everyone who joined in. I hope you enjoyed the stream. And if you enjoyed the stream, you're in luck. There's going to be another one tomorrow night at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And I look forward to seeing you then. Yeah, she could have. I mean, she could have done a fucking fundraiser. She says she quietly donated. Like, what the fuck is that? You're a public figure, like, I mean, to a limited extent. Why are you donating quietly? You should be